Let's start with the image almost everyone knows. A red, skinless giant, steam pouring off its body, calmly peering over Wall Maria as if the last 100 years of peace were just a joke. In that moment, when the colossal titan lifts its foot and slams it into the gate, it feels like the story is beginning. However, by the time that heel hits stone, a 2,000-year-long chain of causes has already been locked in. A girl freeing a pig, a king choosing conquest over compassion, a different king choosing pacifism over justice, and eventually a boy deciding the only way forward is to flatten the world. This is where the fall of one wall is actually the final echo of an ancient war nobody inside those walls even remembers. So here's how we're tackling this. We're going strictly chronological. No flashback whiplash, no jumping between seasons. Like we're starting before any character we know is born, with the source of all living matter, and Ymir Fritz. Then, moving era by era as myths harden into religion, religion turns into politics, politics become oppression, and oppression explodes into open war. As we know, the anime loves to reveal answers out of order. Here, we're putting everything back into the exact sequence it happened. The goal isn't just recap, it's cause and effect. Why does a nameless king build 3 massive walls out of colossal titans and erase his people's memories? How does a single family line in Marley produce both the man who steals the founding titan and the child who nearly hands it back? At one point, a quiet conversation in a doctor's office matters just as much as a battlefield full of titans. Tiny choices keep snowballing until they reach Eren's final decision on the founding titan's spine. Style-wise, this is casual but detailed. We'll move quickly, but we're not skipping the important connective tissue. How a girl running into a strange tree leads to the paths, how those invisible paths connect every Eldian, and why that lets Eren reach backwards and forwards in time. We'll explain how the walls were actually built, what the rumbling really is, why, to you, 2,000 years from now, isn't just a poetic title, and how the story secretly loops back on itself. By the end, the last shot of the series will make sense only because we started at the very beginning. So let's start with the moment the power of Titans first enters the world. Before Titans, the world. The devil of all Earth and the first sin. This is the complete timeline of Attack on Titan. So before we talk about walls, Marley, or Eren, we have to start in a world that barely looks different from a dark fairy tale. Picture a pre-Titan, Europe-style landscape. Endless forests, muddy roads, tiny wooden villages clinging to survival. Most people are farmers or hunters, living under primitive kingdoms where the line between superstition and law doesn't really exist. If the harvest fails, it's blamed on spirits. If the king is angry, it's blamed on you. Commoners aren't citizens, they're tools, property, livestock with names. Above them sits one nameless king, the man who will eventually weaponize Ymir Fritz. He rules from a crude fortress, surrounded by spears, banners, and fear. Well, this is where the series' obsession with oppression really starts. He owns land, animals, and people with the exact same mindset. If something breaks, you replace it. If a slave disobeys, you erase them. At one point, he literally brands humans, hunts them, and calls it justice, meaning the horror we see later with Titans is just an evolution of cruelty that was already there. In this kingdom, Ymir is nothing. She's a barefoot slave, one of many, forced to work, forbidden to speak, watched by guards who treat her like a stray dog that accidentally wandered into a palace. Life is already a prison, long before any walls are built. However, the moment that changes history is almost laughably small. A pig goes missing. Someone frees a pig from its pen. The king lines up the slaves, demands to know who's responsible, and of course no one answers. This is where the lie begins. The crowd points to Ymir. She helped them, she set it free. Whether she did anything at all doesn't matter, the king just needs a scapegoat. Instead of a normal punishment, he declares a hunt. Ymir is released into the wild like game, arrows already flying, dogs unleashed. She runs bleeding through a forest that feels endless, with soldiers laughing and chasing her like it's sport. How do you rebel when your death is entertainment? Eventually, she stumbles into the deepest part of the woods, where a massive, impossible tree rises straight into the sky. Its trunk is so wide it feels like a natural cathedral, and at the base, there's a dark, gaping hole leading straight down. This is where Marley later invents the Devil of All Earth story, in claiming Ymir made a literal deal with a horned demon. But what we actually see is stranger. Inside that hollow tree is water and a bizarre, organic, spine-like entity, the source of all living matter. No horns, no pitchfork, just something alien and ancient waiting at the bottom. As we know, what Ymir meets when she falls into that darkness will define the next 2,000 years. For now, she's still falling. The human world is above her, the Titan world is below, and this one choice of a powerless girl running from dogs becomes the doorway the entire story walks through. Ymir Fritz, the first Titan and the birth of a curse. She hits the water, and this is where Attack on Titan really begins. Ymir sinks into that underground pool, lungs burning, vision fading. Out of the dark, this pale, spine-like thing drifts toward her. No face, no voice. Just an instinct that feels older than humanity itself. It latches onto her back, drills into her spine, and in that instant, the powerless slave becomes the very first founding Titan. This is the complete timeline of Titans, starting at the exact second a terrified girl fuses with the source of all living matter. She bursts out of the tree not as prey, but as a monster goddess, towering, ribcage exposed, eyes blazing. The hunters who chased her crushed like insects. You'd expect this to be her liberation moment, right? However, when Ymir crawls back to King Fritz, she kneels. She doesn't overthrow him, she offers herself. This is where the twisted wish consequence story locks in. She gets overwhelming power, but her mind stays chained. From there, Eldia changes almost overnight. With Ymir's founding Titan, they build roads in days, bridges in hours, entire cities out of nothing. At one point, she's reshaping the land itself, creating prosperity for the very man who treated her as livestock. In war, she's even worse. A living weapon that tramples Marley and neighboring tribes, turning battlefields into slaughterhouses. The Eldians become incredibly powerful and quickly rise from a small tribe to a conquering empire, all because one girl never learned how to want freedom for herself. King Fritz rewards her with status. He takes her as a concubine, has 3 daughters with her, Maria, Rose, and Sina, and continues to use her as a tool. Years pass, and Ymir never speaks up, never refuses. She just continued to serve, as we know she will for a very long time. Eventually, her story in the human world ends in one brutal second. During an assassination attempt, a spear flies toward the king. Ymir, on reflex, throws her Titan body in front of him and is fatally impaled. She collapses, bleeding out, Titan form fading. The king walks over, looks down at the woman who built his empire, and doesn't grieve. He orders their daughters to eat her corpse. Maria, Rose, and Sina consume her remains piece by piece, inheriting fragments of her power. Later, their descendants will continue this ritual, splitting Ymir's gift into the 9 Titans and locking in the 13-year curse of Ymir, meaning no one can hold that power longer than she did. But Ymir herself doesn't move on. In the paths, she stands alone in a desert of sand and branches, endlessly shaping Titans by hand whenever a royal-blooded command reaches her. 2,000 years of silent obedience? What kind of person keeps serving long after death? And who could possibly be the one to finally tell her stop? The answer ties directly into Eren, Mikasa, and the moment this entire timeline eats its own tail. 9 Titans, 13 years, how the system of power is born. This is the complete timeline of Attack on Titan, so we can't just stop at Ymir's death, because that's actually where the system is born. When Ymir is crushed saving King Fritz, he doesn't mourn, he harvests. Her corpse is chopped up and fed to their 3 daughters, in a ritual that looks more like livestock processing than a funeral. Let's start with that image, then zoom out. Those daughters are ordered to bear children and have them bear more, so the bloodline never thins. Over generations, through forced breeding and repeated cannibalism, Ymir's single Titan power doesn't stay whole, it fractures. What began as one founding Titan eventually branches into the 9 Titans: Attack, Colossal, Armored, Female, Beast, Jaw, Cart, Warhammer, and the Founding itself. In the paths, that split doesn't look like 9 monsters. It looks like a glowing tree. Ymir sits at the center like a root system made of sand and light. From her, 9 thick branches extend outward, each one a Titan line. Every Eldian born anywhere in the world is like a leaf on this tree, connected by invisible veins to the same core. Time doesn't matter here. Distance doesn't matter. If you're Eldian, you're on the tree. This is where the rules crystallize. First, the curse of Ymir. Every Titan shifter only lives 13 years after inheriting a power, echoing the length of Ymir's own life of service. And no one escapes that timer. Second, Titan powers pass on through consumption. To inherit a specific Titan, you literally eat the current holder, meaning every succession is a murder dressed up as duty. Third, the founding Titan can reshape Eldian bodies and rewrite memories, but only when the holder has royal blood. No royal blood, no god mode. At one point, this might have looked like divine favor to Eldia. In practice, it becomes an engine of horror. Children are raised knowing they'll be eaten by younger siblings for the good of the empire. Noble families compete to stay close to Titan lines, offering their kids as vessels. The 13-year limit forces constant turnover, so war and politics never stop. They just change hosts. Skip forward through centuries of conquest, and you get a repeating pattern. A Titan is inherited, yet used in war, then passed on before the timer runs out. Eldia crushes Marley, Marley pushes back, and both sides keep feeding their own people to keep up. The tree keeps glowing, the leaves keep falling. Eventually, the king doesn't just use the system, he bureaucratizes it. Breeding programs, bloodline charts, military rotations for each of the 9. Ymir's personal tragedy is now a multi-generational machine. This machine will build the Eldian Empire at its height, and later, when the balance flips, it will inspire Marley's warrior program, child soldiers like Reiner and Annie, trained from birth to become the next leaves sacrificed to the same ancient tree. And somewhere far down that branch, a boy named Grisha and later Eren will be slotted into this cycle like they never had a choice. Empire of Titans, Eldia's rise, Marley's fall, and the seeds of rebellion. That machine of inherited Titan power doesn't just shape a few tragic families. This is the complete timeline of how it builds an entire empire. Let's start with Eldia at its absolute peak. When the 9 Titans aren't just weapons, they're basically weapons of God. Skip forward from Ymir's death a few centuries, and Eldia has expanded across the continent. With the founding Titan coordinating everything, they use the Colossal, the Armored, the Beast, and the rest as living nukes. Cities that rebel are trampled, rival nations either surrender or get wiped out. And non-Eldian peoples like the Marleyans are pushed down into second-class status or straight-up slavery. This is where the Devils of Eldia legend starts. To the outside world, they're the monsters who can turn into Titans on command. Inside the Empire, though, it's not one unified happy family. The 9 Titans are distributed among different Eldian noble houses, each one building its own mini power base. At one point, the family with the Warhammer Titan is throwing its weight around. Another clan holds the Beast, another the Cart, and so on. On paper, they all serve the royal line that controls the founding Titan. In reality, this creates a constant, low-key civil war, with marriages, assassinations, and succession schemes all revolving around who gets which Titan next. This decentralization is basically a time bomb. Every 13 years, someone has to inherit, meaning every transition is a chance for betrayal. Eventually, some families start thinking, why should we let the Fritz King call all the shots if we're the ones actually fighting? I mean, that's how you get the ancestors of the Tiber family, the Warhammer holders, quietly stepping back from the front lines and rebranding themselves as honorable nobles who can speak to the rest of the world. They're still Eldian, still using Titan power, but they're already questioning whether ruling by fear can last. Meanwhile, Marley is learning. Originally, Marley is just one more conquered people under Eldian boots, forced to send soldiers and laborers into Eldia's Titan war machine. But being that close to the Nine Titans means they study how Titan warfare works from the inside. They watch Eldian arrogance. They see the noble infighting, and they start planning. What if they could turn Eldia's own system against it? What if oppressed Marleyans could control Titans themselves? As generations pass, the split inside Eldia gets worse. Some nobles double down on cruelty, leaning on the subjects of Ymir myth to justify anything. Others, like the Tiber line, decide Eldia has gone too far and quietly open channels with Marleyan elites. The balance of power starts to tilt, resistance cells form in Marley, Eldian factions clash over who should really guide the founding Titan, and the royal ideology fractures. Eventually, all these tensions snap into the Great Titan War, a conflict so huge it will literally redraw the map and end with King Karl Fritz retreating to Paradise Island as we know it. How does the most powerful empire in the world collapse almost overnight? That's where we go next. The Great Titan War. Karl Fritz, the Tibers, and the Great Retreat. This is the complete timeline of attack on Titan, and this is where the most powerful empire in the world throws the game on purpose. Many generations after Ymir, the founding Titan ends up with King Karl Fritz. Let's start with this. Karl is a totally different kind of Fritz. While his ancestors gloried in conquest, he's horrified by centuries of Eldian oppression, ethnic cleansing, and Titan terror. He looks at his own bloodline and decides the unforgivable can't be undone. In his mind, Eldia doesn't deserve to be forgiven, it deserves to lose. So when tensions between Eldian families and Marley explode into the Great Titan War, Karl makes a secret choice. Outwardly, it looks like a standard power struggle between 9 Titans. Internally, Karl has already decided the ending. He will accept defeat, dismantle Eldia, and pull the plug on the empire that rules the world. Then the question is, how do you make a controlled collapse look like a glorious revolution? Enter the Tiber family. They're Eldian nobles who control the Warhammer Titan and live among the Marleyans. In public, they're good Eldians who sided with Marley. In private, they meet with Karl and script a story. Together, they invent a fake hero, Helos, the legendary Marleyan warrior who supposedly rose up, defeated the Eldian king, and ended the Age of Titans. The Tibers will play the role of noble traitors, and Karl will play the role of cowardly king who gets outsmarted. Skip forward through the so-called Great Titan War. To the outside world, Marley's human armies and Helos push back the Eldian Titans. Marley gains control of 7 of the 9 and Eldia crumbles. However, behind the scenes, Karl is deliberately withdrawing Titans, abandoning fronts, and letting Marley win. At one point, he straight up chooses not to use overwhelming founding power, meaning the fall of Eldia is essentially staged. Eventually, Karl enacts the real plan, the Great Retreat. He gathers a huge portion of Eldians loyal to the crown and migrates them to Paradise Island, the remote land where Ymir once died. There, he uses the founding Titan to command countless colossal-type Titans buried in the earth, has them harden around his people, and creates 3 concentric walls, Maria, Rose, and Sina. Those aren't stone. They're millions of wall Titans lined up shoulder to shoulder. Inside, Karl uses the founding Titan again to erase his people's memories. Everyone within the walls wakes up believing humanity outside is gone, and Titans rule the rest of the world. The Eldian Empire? I never existed. The global war? Forgotten. This closed island becomes the tiny stage for the main story as we know it. To protect this fragile lie, Karl programs one last thing into the founding Titan, the rumbling. If the outside world attacks Paradis, the king will supposedly unleash the Wall Titans and flatten the world. But here's the twist. Karl makes a vow renouncing war and has no intention of ever using that power. The rumbling is a nuclear bluff tied to a pacifist king. So what happens when that power lands in the hands of someone who isn't a pacifist at all? Walls, vows, and lies. How Paradis becomes a cage. So what happens when that power lands in the hands of someone who isn't a pacifist at all? To answer that, we have to lock in how Karl Fritz turns Paradis itself into a cage long before Eren is ever born. This is the complete timeline, so we can't skip the invisible rules that control everything later. Let's start with the vow. When Karl uses the founding Titan to move his people to Paradise and build the walls, he doesn't just promise the world he'll never attack, he programs it. Any future founding Titan inheritor with royal blood is forced to follow his pacifist ideology. That means even if a future king wants to protect Paradis, the founding's full power simply refuses to be used for war. The king's will is overwritten by Karl's guilt. This is where the royal family basically ghosts their own kingdom. To avoid outside revenge and internal rebellion, the Fritz name disappears. Inside the walls, they rebrand as the Rice family hiding in a chapel on a quiet estate, while a fake royal line, the Fritz King in Mitras, acts as the public monarch. The military police, the nobles, the whole political structure all bow to a puppet, while the true founding Titan continues in the shadows. At one point, the Rice King uses the founding to wipe almost everyone's memories. Overnight, history is rewritten. The people inside the walls now believe they're the last humans alive. Titans are seen as mindless monsters that appeared from nowhere. Beyond the walls, only death, meaning the entire island becomes a controlled ecosystem of fear, where humanity huddles under 3 concentric walls made of colossal titans and never asks what's outside. However, the memory wipe isn't perfect. Some bloodlines and individuals are completely or partially immune to the founding Titan's manipulation. The Ackermans, for example, and people who happen to be outside the range or in special circumstances during the wipe continue with their real memories. This tiny flaw in Karl's plan is what eventually lets people like Erwin's father notice that the official story doesn't add up. As we know, even a single curious mind is dangerous in a world built on lies. Pattern interrupt. What kind of king designs his own super soldiers and then makes sure they can't be controlled by his main power? Karl does. The Ackermans and a few other specialized clans are created as living weapons, bodyguards with awakened strength, perfect for protecting the king. But because they're immune to the memory rewrite, they become walking contradictions. The strongest free warriors in a kingdom designed to never be truly free. All of this continues quietly for 100 years. A fake king on the throne, a hidden rice line with the founding, a pacifist vow that locks the island in place, and a population convinced the outside world is gone. Skip forward to the fall of Wall Maria, and now we can see it clearly. When the Colossal kicks in the gate, it's not just a breach in stone. It's the first crack in Karl Fritz's cage. Eventually, those cracks will shatter everything. Ackermans, underground cities, and a manufactured society. Those cracks in Karl Fritz's cage don't just let Titans in, they let the truth leak out. To keep that truth buried for 100 years, the king didn't just build walls of stone and colossals. He built people. This is the complete timeline, so we have to look at the human weapons hidden inside Paradis itself. Let's start with the Ackermans. Long before Eren was born, Eldian scientists under the royal family experimented on human subjects using Titan science. The goal was simple and terrifying: create a bloodline that could tap into the paths and awaken battle instincts on command without actually turning into Titans. The result was the Ackerman clan, a line of warriors who, at one point, were essentially living, thinking blades for the founding Titan's host. When an Ackerman awakens while protecting someone, their body remembers centuries of combat. That's why Levi moves. like gravity doesn't apply, and why Mikasa, as we know, can dismantle a squad the moment Eren is threatened. They're built to be the king's ultimate bodyguards, immune to the memory wipe, perfectly loyal. In theory. But this is where the plan breaks. The Ackermans, along with another clan tied to the king's power, eventually refuse to obey. They won't submit to the pacifist vow, and they won't let their will be overwritten. The royal family responds the way every frightened tyrant does: extermination. The clans are hunted, driven underground, or forced to live as nameless outcasts. That's why Kenny becomes a serial killer in the shadows, why Levi grows up in the underground, and why Mikasa's family is targeted and wiped out in a single night. They're all remnants of a bloodline the king tried to erase. Zoom out, and the entire island is built on that same logic. Inside the walls, class isn't just money, it's distance from death. The wealthy merchants, nobles, and fake royal court cluster around Wall Sina, protected by layers of human shields. Poorer citizens are pushed to Wall Rose and especially Wall Maria, crammed into frontier districts that jut out like bait. If Titans break through, who dies first? The expendable outer classes, giving the center time to react. To keep those people compliant, the regime leans on faith and fear. The Church of the Walls preaches that the walls are sacred and must never be touched, literally worshiping a barrier made of sleeping colossal titans without knowing it. Any talk of the outside world is heresy. The military police, the interior government, and the church all work together to crush questions before they spread. Skip forward to daily life in Shiganshina. On the surface, it's peaceful. Kids playing, merchants shouting, soldiers drinking. Underneath, there's quiet desperation. The Survey Corps rides out and comes back shredded, earning a reputation as suicidal idiots who waste taxes on hopeless expeditions. Parents tell their kids to join the military police and hide in Sina, not chase fairy tales beyond the walls. But on one rooftop, a boy named Eren Yeager stares at the horizon like it's an insult. He watches the birds fly over the walls and can't stand it. Why are they free when he isn't? That question is small now, just a child's frustration. Eventually, it will collide with Titan power, buried history, and the fate of the entire world. And the moment the Colossal's foot hits Shiganshina, that question finally gets its brutal answer. Across the sea. Marley's warrior program and Grisha's tragedy. When that colossal foot hits Shiganshina, this is the complete timeline zooming out for the first time. Because while one boy watches his home get crushed, an entire empire across the sea is already playing with Titan power like it's artillery. Let's start with Marley. After the Great Titan War, Marley ends up controlling 7 of the 9 Titans. On paper, they're the new superpower of the world. They use the Jaw, Cart, Beast, Colossal, Female, Armored, and one more to dominate battlefields, crush enemy nations, and keep everyone terrified. However, there's one thing they can't touch: the Founding Titan, sealed away on Paradise Island, along with millions of wall colossals and the threat of the rumbling. This is where Marley's paranoia kicks in. They know that if the Founding Titan ever decides to walk those walls, the world is done. So they turn to the one group they hate the most: Eldians. Inside Marley's borders, Eldians are forced into internment zones, segregated behind fences, watched by armed guards. They wear armbands just to exist, taught in schools that they're devils whose ancestors committed unforgivable sins. Their only supposed redemption? Becoming weapons again. Marley creates the warrior program where Eldian children compete to inherit Titan powers and fight for the very country that despises them. At one point, kids like Reiner, Annie, Bertolt, and Zeke are literally raised to believe that dying for Marley is the only way to cleanse their blood. It's psychological warfare disguised as patriotism. Skip forward a bit and we meet one boy in this system, Grisha Yeager. As a child in the Liberio internment zone, he's curious, restless, and already hates the walls around him. One day he sneaks his little sister Faye outside the zone to watch an airship. They're caught by Marleyan officers. Aunt Grisha is beaten and dragged home. Faye never comes back. Later, he learns she was mauled to death by dogs for sport. That moment breaks something in him. Grisha grows up seeing that brutality repeated, and eventually he's recruited into a secret group, the Eldian Restorationists. This underground movement worships the old Eldian Empire, passes down forbidden history, and dreams of reclaiming the founding Titan to restore Eldian pride. Guiding them from the shadows is a mysterious informant known only as the Owl. This is where the complete timeline gets layered. The Owl is actually Eren Kruger, current inheritor of the Attack Titan, working as a Marleyan officer while secretly sabotaging them. Grisha marries Dina Fritz, a woman of royal blood, and they have a son, Zeke. To Marley, that makes Zeke the perfect candidate for the warrior program. To the Restorationists, he's their future savior. Eventually, the pressure crushes this little family. Marley's indoctrination turns Zeke against his parents. He betrays them to the authorities, and the Restorationists are rounded up. On the shore of Paradis, they're sentenced to be turned into mindless titans and set loose on the island. But at the edge of that cliff, with screaming men being kicked into Titan serum, the Owl finally reveals himself, saves Grisha alone, and passes on the Attack Titan. One father is remade there, one son is left behind in Marley, and another son hasn't even been born yet. All three timelines are now moving straight toward one locked basement in Shiganshina. And the next time we open that door, the world inside the walls will never look the same again. The fall of the Restorationists and the birth of two Titans. This is the complete timeline of Attack on Titan, and right now we're standing on the edge of the island that will decide everything. The Marleyan guards have dragged the Restorationists to the edge of a massive wall on Paradis, and their trial is one of the most horrifying systems in this world. Let's start with their punishment. One by one, the Eldian prisoners are injected with Titan serum, their veins burning as the fluid races through their bodies. Then, without ceremony, they're kicked off the wall into the night. As they fall, the Titan curse takes over, their bodies twist, and they slam into the ground as pure Titans. Mindless, wandering, eternally hungry. And this is where a lot of the random Titans we see later actually come from, meaning every creepy grin outside the walls was once a person dumped here by Marley. At one point, it's Grisha's turn. He's beaten, broken, and ready to die. Gross shoves him toward the edge, the serum ready, when a soldier suddenly throws Gross off instead. The man removes his hat and finally reveals himself. This is the Owl Eren Kruger. In that instant, Kruger transforms into the Attack Titan and absolutely tears through the Marleyan squad, ripping ships apart and flattening soldiers who just spent years torturing Eldians. Afterward, Kruger lays Grisha on the wall and explains everything. He is the current holder of the Attack Titan, and the power comes with the 13-year limit that started with Ymir Fritz. Kruger is at the end of his term, so he tells Grisha to continue the mission, cross the sea, infiltrate the walls, find the royal family, and steal the founding Titan so Eldians can eventually be freed. Then he does something that breaks the timeline. He tells Grisha he must save Mikasa and Armin. But those names don't exist yet. Eren isn't even born. How does he know? This is where Paths quietly enters the story. Through the founding Titan, memories and wills flow backward and forward, meaning future Eren's influence is already leaking into this scene. The timeline isn't strictly linear anymore. It's a loop tightening around one boy in Shiganshina. Kruger passes the Attack Titan to Grisha, and Grisha swims to Paradis. Skip forward a few years and he's living inside the walls as a respected doctor. He marries Carla, starts a family, and they have Eren. While Grisha builds this peaceful life, he never forgets his mission or the weight of the Restorationists' dream resting on his shoulders. Far away, Marley prepares its own move. Their warrior program selects 4 children, Reiner, Berthold, Annie, and Marcel, and sends them to Paradis to seize the founding Titan, 2 fathers, 4 child soldiers, 1 hidden king inside the walls. All of these threads are about to collide at Shiganshina, and as we know, the fall of Wall Maria will be the spark that sets the entire world on fire. You're 845, the Colossal's kick, and the end of Eren's childhood. By the time those four warriors reach the island, this is the complete timeline closing in on one tiny district, Shiganshina. This is where we zoom in from global empires to three kids on a hill, and staring at a sea of clouds and dreaming about the ocean they've never seen. Eren, Mikasa, and Armin grow up pressed against the edge of the world. Inside the walls, people act like this cage is normal, even comfortable. The military police lounge in the interior, merchants hoard food, and most citizens repeat the same line: humanity is safe as long as the walls stand. Armin reads forbidden books about deserts and ice fields. Eren rages at the complacency, and Mikasa quietly orbits around him. They're children, but they're already rejecting the story the king wrote for them. Then, one day in year 845, the sky itself seems to split. A flash of lightning, steam, and a hand big enough to wrap around the wall's battlements grabs the top of Wall Maria. The colossal titan appears out of nowhere, taller than the wall, it meaning the ultimate symbol of safety is instantly obsolete. With one kick, it blows the Shiganshina gate apart, launching a shockwave that shreds houses and hurls people like debris. This is where the nightmare accelerates. As smaller titans pour through the ruined gate, chaos explodes in the streets. Soldiers scramble, cannons fire, but it's essentially a slaughter. At one point, another lightning strike hits the inner gate, and the armored titan barrels through like a living battering ram, sealing humanity's fate for the day. In a single coordinated attack, the outer territory is lost, and the future famine is already guaranteed. On a side street, it all collapses into one house. Eren wakes up under rubble, pinned and powerless. Mikasa is trapped beside him, and in front of them, Karla Yeager is crushed from the waist down. Ahanas tries to fight a titan, freezes in terror, and runs with the kids instead. So Eren watches, screaming, as a smiling titan slowly lifts his mother and bites her in half. That image becomes the core of his entire life. While this happens, Grisha disappears into the chaos, heading into the forest for his own confrontation with the Rice family that we'll only fully understand much later. Humanity retreats behind wall rows. A third of the population crowds inward, a third of the land is gone, and forced conscription leads to mass deaths and famine. The official story? A tragic Titan breach. No one inside the walls even imagines this was a Marleyan operation years in the making. Eren doesn't care about geopolitics yet. He stares at the burning ruins on the refugee boat and swears to kill every Titan. Eventually he, Mikasa, Aang and Armin join the military, aiming for the scouts who dare to go outside. This is where the personal and global timelines quietly fuse. While Eren vows revenge, Grisha is about to inject him with Titan serum, pass on the founding and attack Titans, and erase his memories. The key, the basement, the truth of that night in the forest? Those answers will wait, buried under Shiganshina, until we return years later and finally unlock the real story behind the fall of Wall Maria. Training, Trost, and the first Titan shifter reveal. This is the complete timeline of Attack on Titan, and now we skip forward a few years from that night in Shiganshina to the part where Eren's revenge turns into actual military training. After losing his mother and his home, Eren joins the 104th Cadet Corps, and for 3 intense years, the story zooms in on this one class that's secretly stacked with future world shakers. Let's start with the basics of that training era. The cadets learn hand-to-hand combat, discipline, and how to use ODM gear without instantly face-planting. This is where we meet Jean, the pragmatic rival who wants the safe life in the military police, Sasha, the food-obsessed prodigy with insane instincts, and Connie, the goofy but loyal teammate. We also see quiet Historia hiding under the alias Krista, plus Reiner, the dependable big brother, Annie, the cold, close combat genius, and Berthold, the tall, anxious one who fades into the background on purpose. They're all ranking themselves, choosing between the garrison, the interior military police, and the survey corps that Eren is obsessed with. Eren's goal never changes. While most people want to avoid Titans, he keeps screaming about killing them all and seeing the outside world, meaning he's dead set on joining the Scouts, even if it's a death sentence. Eventually, graduation day comes. The top 10 are named, and for a second, it feels like a normal coming-of-age story. Then the colossal Titan shows up again and kicks the door down on that illusion. At one point, during a routine day on Wall Rose at Trost District, the Colossal appears in a flash of steam, just like at Shiganshina. Another section of the wall is blown open, Titans flood in, and this class's first real mission is instantly a massacre. The cadets scramble, gas runs low, people freeze up and get eaten. In the chaos, Armin is grabbed by a Titan, and Eren dives into its mouth to drag him out. We watch Eren's leg get bitten off, his body swallowed, and it genuinely looks like the main character just died in episode 5. However, this is where the story pivots. After Armin wakes up in shock, a rogue Titan appears on the battlefield, ignoring humans and savagely attacking other Titans. It fights with purpose, protects people without saying a word, and eventually collapses. Then, from its steaming nape, Eren emerges alive. Humanity has never seen anything like this. Titans are supposed to be mindless. Now one of them is a human. The military panics. Some want Eren executed on the spot, others want to dissect him, but the Scouts see a weapon. Under heavy fire, they gamble on using Eren's Titan form to lift a massive boulder and plug the breach at Trost. He loses control at first, even attacking Mikasa, but eventually locks in. Eldia carries the stone and seals the gate. For the first time since the walls fell, humanity pushes Titans back instead of just dying. Eren becomes a symbol of hope and a terrifying unknown. The military police and nobles argue over whether to control him or erase him, while the Survey Corps quietly claims custody. And in the background, Reiner, Annie, and Berthold are just watching. They already know exactly what Eren is, and as we know their mission isn't over yet, they're about to change tactics and plan how to steal the coordinate hiding inside him, female Titan, the Wall's secret, and the King of Nothing. This is where the complete timeline inside the walls stops being humans versus Titans and quietly upgrades to humans versus humans who control Titans. Reiner, Annie, and Berthold have failed to grab Eren in the chaos, so the Survey Corps plans something bold: the 57th Exterior Scouting Mission. Let's start with that operation. Erwin designs a formation where Eren is hidden deep in the center, using him as live bait to lure out the mysterious intelligent Titan that breached Wall Maria. As they ride out beyond the walls, a new abnormal appears, a tall, muscular, female-shaped Titan that dodges attacks, guards her nape, and actually analyzes the formation in real time. This is the female Titan, and she is not here to play. She plows through soldiers, relentlessly pushing toward Eren's position, meaning someone out there knows exactly what he is. Erwin's plan is brutal, but effective. He leads the female Titan into a forest of giant trees, sacrifices entire squads to slow her down, and has Levi's elite unit ambush and pin her with specialized restraints. For a second, it looks like humanity finally caught a Titan shifter. However, at one point, she screams, summoning nearby Titans who swarm her body and eat her to destroy the evidence. Even in defeat, she protects her identity. Skip forward to the return trip. The female Titan reappears, kills Levi's entire squad in one of the most one-sided slaughters in the series, and forces Eren to transform. Their fight in the forest and later inside the walls is savage, two intelligent Titans brawling like living weapons. Eventually, Mikasa and Levi manage to rescue Eren and slice open the female Titan's nape. Inside is Annie Leonhardt, their former comrade from training. Cornered, she hardens her entire body into an unbreakable crystal, locking away her memories and leaving the Scouts with one terrifying fact: human enemies with Titan powers have been living among them the entire time. Right after this, the world gets even stranger. During the battle, a chunk of wall Cena breaks, revealing a massive Titan face just sitting there inside the wall. Pastor Nick, from the Church of the Walls, panics, begging them to keep sunlight off it at all costs. This is where we learn the walls themselves are essentially made of countless Titans, and the Church has been hiding this truth for years. That secret ties directly into the next escalation: politics. As we know, Erwin has always suspected the monarchy is lying about humanity being alone. The Survey Corps uncovers that the current king on the throne is a literal puppet, drugged and posed as a ruler, while a shadow government and the military police run everything. The true royal bloodline is the Rice family, meaning Historia Rice, the quiet girl from the 104th, is actually the rightful queen. Erwin and Commander Pixis orchestrate a coup d'etat. Through forged evidence, public exposure of military police crimes, and a staged crisis, they force the noble's hand and arrest the fake king. Historia is elevated as the new monarch, while the Survey Corps is finally legitimized instead of being treated like disposable lunatics. But the heart of the lie sits under a chapel. Rod Rice, the last adult of the royal line, kidnaps Eren and brings Historia to a hidden cavern beneath the Rice family chapel. There, he reveals the true history of the founding Titan. Frida Rice, Historia's half-sister, was the previous founding Titan, using the power inherited from 2,000 years of royal memory to maintain Karl Fritz's pacifist vow. Grisha Yeager stormed this very chapel the day Wall Maria fell, turned into the attack Titan, killed the Rice family, and stole the founding Titan from Frida. Rod's plan is simple and horrifying. He wants Historia to inject herself with Titan serum, transform, and eat Eren, restoring the founding Titan to royal control. Instead, Historia breaks the cycle, rejects her father, and smashes the syringe. Rod, desperate, licks the spilled serum, becomes a massive crawling abnormal, and later dies in a spectacular battle, where Historia lands the killing blow and becomes queen in truth. In that cavern, Eren also learned something far worse. His father later injected him with Titan serum, turned him into a pure Titan, and let him eat Grisha's own body to inherit both the attack and founding Titans. Eren is, unknowingly, his father's killer. That revelation sits like a loaded gun in the story, waiting for the basement and the paths to tell us what this inheritance really means for the fate of the world. Return to Shiganshina. Basement, truths and the world beyond the walls. That loaded gun finally goes off when the scouts launch their do-or-die mission to retake Wall Maria. This is the complete timeline, so we have to sit with how desperate this moment is. Humanity's last offensive, one shot to seal the hole at Shiganshina and reach the basement that's been haunting the story since episode 1. Let's start with the setup. The new Survey Corps, stripped down after the coup, rides out under Erwin. Reiner is hiding in the walls, Berthold is waiting to drop in, and Zeke's Beast Titan is parked outside the district with a whole army of Titans like he's hosting the world's worst baseball game. The scouts split. Levi and Erwin's group on the outer side, Eren and the others inside the ringed city, trying to find and neutralize the warriors before the trap closes. This is where everything snaps. Reiner pops out of the wall, transforms into the armored Titan, and the battle in the streets begins. Outside, the Beast Titan starts raining boulders, shredding the horses and pinning Erwin's forces down. At one point, it feels completely hopeless. Erwin realizes the only way through is a suicide charge. He leads a final cavalry rush straight into the Beast's barrage, giving Levi a tiny opening to flank Zeke. Erwin is torn apart. The recruits are annihilated, but Levi reaches the Beast Titan and absolutely dismantles him, only for the Cart Titan to snatch Zeke away at the last second. Inside the walls, Armin makes his own suicidal call. Facing Bertholdt's colossal Titan, he realizes they can't win a straight fight. so he lures the Colossal into burning all his steam while Armin clings to the wall, getting roasted alive, buying Eren time to slip behind and pull Bertholdt out of his nape. Armin is left a charred corpse. Erwin is barely alive. Levi has one Titan serum. Who do they save? This is where the story forces a generational shift. After a brutal argument, Levi lets Erwin rest and injects Armin, meaning the boy who dreamed of the sea, inherits the colossal Titan by eating Bertholdt. Reiner, meanwhile, is defeated but not finished off, and Zeke retreats while throwing one last line at Eren. They're both victims of their father, and they'll talk later. As we know, that later will reshape the entire world. With Wall Maria sealed and the warriors gone, the scouts can finally enter the Yeager basement. It's almost quiet, dust, shelves, and a locked drawer. Inside, Grisha's journals wait. Skip forward a few pages and the series rips open. Photos from outside the walls, detailed accounts of Marley, and the revelation that Eldians on the mainland are oppressed, branded as devils, and used as weapons in global wars. Humanity was never wiped out. It just continued without them and now sees Paradise as a demon island. The Titans, the walls, the last of humanity's story we've followed are essentially one side of a much bigger conflict. For Eren, staring at the ocean no longer means freedom. It means enemies on the other shore. And the next phase of this timeline will be about what he does with that knowledge. Across the sea. Marley's perspective and the inheritance of hatred. Standing at that ocean, Eren sees more than water, he sees targets. And because this is the complete timeline, we now have to cross that ocean and live on the other side for a while. Let's start with Reiner. Before he was the armored Titan crashing through Wall Maria, he was a scared Eldian kid in Marley, desperate to be useful. His mother drilled it into him that if he became a warrior, their family could move into the internment zone's nicer areas and be honored Eldians. Reiner isn't talented like Marcel or Annie, but he clings to the propaganda. Being chosen means he isn't a devil. It means his existence has meaning. In Marley's warrior program, Eldian children compete to inherit the 9 Titans, fully aware that inheriting one is a 13-year death sentence. They're told this is the greatest honor possible. Die early. Die painfully, but die for Marley, and you've atoned for your blood. This is where the cycle gets cruel. Kids like Reiner, Annie, Bertholdt, and later Gabi and Falco grow up believing that sacrificing themselves is the only way to wash away being spawn of the devil. Skip forward to the mission to Paradis. Marcel, the Jaw Titan, saves Reiner from a pure Titan and gets eaten instead. In 1 second, the team's most capable member is gone, and Reiner's survivor's guilt detonates. Annie breaks Reiner's arm and wants to abort. Bertholdt is paralyzed with fear. But Reiner snaps and doubles down on the mission, essentially rewriting his own personality just to keep going. At one point, he's the big brother of the 104th. At another point, he's the soldier of Marley. Both are true, and it tears him apart. Back home, Marley's power is rotting. Even with Titans, they're falling behind technologically to other nations developing artillery, airships, and anti-Titan weapons. The Great Titan War is long over, and now Marley is the Empire trying to hold on to relevance. So the government leans on what it still has. Eldian warriors. The plan is simple and horrifying. Attack Paradise again, steal the founding Titan, and use that to secure global dominance before the rest of the world catches up. Years later, Eren is the one who crosses the sea. He infiltrates Liberio under the fake name Kruger, missing a leg, acting like a traumatized veteran. He befriends Falco, another Eldian kid caught in the same machine that once devoured Reiner. Eren listens as Falco delivers letters, as Reiner breaks down in that basement, confessing everything he did inside the walls. And Eren just sits there calm, asking, "Why did you destroy the wall? What answer could possibly satisfy him?" Eventually, Marley hosts a grand festival in Liberio. Willie Tybur, from the family that secretly controlled Marley since the Great Titan War, steps onto the stage to declare war on Paradis. He frames Eren and the island as the ultimate global threat, uniting the world against them. However, as we know, this speech is happening directly above Eren. He transforms mid-sentence, erupts from beneath the stage, crushes Willy, and begins a massacre that flips the entire moral framing of the story. And the worst part? This is only the beginning of what Eren has decided to do, Eren the aggressor. Liberio, the raid, and the path to the rumbling Eren's transformation in Liberio is where this is the complete timeline really flips. 1 second, the world is listening to Willy Tyburn's grand speech. The next second, the attack titan erupts from underground and turns the festival into a slaughterhouse. Buildings crumple, blood sprays across the stage, and civilians are crushed under rubble in scenes that directly mirror Shiganshina. Let's start with how calculated this actually is. Eren lures Reiner into a basement, forces him to confront the kid whose hometown he destroyed, then transforms right under the VIP box. He smashes Marley's high command, and hurls debris into the crowd and tears through soldiers and kids with the same cold momentum we once saw from the Smiling Titan. The Survey Corps drops in from airships like demons from the sky, ODM gear flashing, bombs shredding the battlefield. To the people of Liberio, Paradis is now the invading monster. This is where the personal fallout hits. Gabi watches her friends die and sees Sasha, this random island devil, gunning people down from the airship. When Gabi sneaks aboard and kills Sasha, the shot echoes way beyond that cabin. It hardens her hatred, breaks Connie and Jean, and shows us that Eren's war is already poisoning the next generation. At one point, even Mikasa and Armin hesitate around him, because the boy who swore to kill all Titans is now killing terrified civilians instead. Reiner, meanwhile, completely collapses. After the raid, he's back in Marley, begging to be allowed to die, crushed by guilt that the same horror he unleashed on Shiganshina has now been brought home. The cycle continues, and Eren is the one turning the wheel. Back on Paradis, that wheel splits the island in two. Some soldiers and civilians rally behind Eren and Zeke, forming the Yeagerists and pushing a hardline, by any means necessary agenda. Others, like Hang and the old scouts, are terrified of what he's becoming. Is Eren saving Eldia, or dragging it into global suicide? Skip forward to Zeke's real plan. On the surface, he and Eren are allies, planning to use the founding Titan and royal blood to save Eldians. But Zeke's euthanasia plan is essentially a peaceful extinction. Render every Eldian infertile, so this is the last generation, ending the Titan curse by ending the people who carry it. However, the paths change everything. When Eren and Zeke make contact, time seems to stop, and they're pulled into a vast, sand-filled desert under a branching tree. This is the paths, where all Eldians and Titan powers connect, and where Ymir Fritz has been silently obeying royal commands for 2,000 years. Zeke tries to use the Founder first, chaining Eren and testing his memories. But this is where Eren's true power shows. By moving through Grisha's memories, he reveals that the Attack Titan can influence the past, meaning Eren himself pushed Grisha to slaughter the Rice family and give him the Founder. Eventually, he breaks Zeke's control, reaches Ymir, and does the one thing no royal ever did. He asks what she wants. He convinces her to lend him everything. The walls crumble, millions of colossal titans rise from their hardened shells, and the rumbling begins. Eren speaks through the paths to every Eldian, announcing that he'll destroy all life outside Paradis. Karl Fritz's bluff, as we know, is now an active apocalypse marching across the world. The rumbling, the final alliance, and to you 2,000 years from now. The rumbling turns the bluff of Karl Fritz into the loudest "I told you so" in history. This is the complete timeline, so we have to feel the scale here. Entire coastlines vanish under steam. Cities that spent a century calling Eldians devils are erased in minutes. Nations fire artillery, airships, everything they have, and it all just bounces off a walking continent of bone and colossal titans. As the titans march, what the world finally understands. The founding titan isn't in the hands of a pacifist king anymore. It's with someone willing to do what Karl Fritz never would. At one point, Marley's survivors and the rest of the world watch their maps become useless. Their borders literally stomped flat. We're talking billions dead, entire cultures wiped out before they can even surrender. Skip forward to the last people who still have a real shot at stopping this. On Paradise and in Marley's ruins, enemies who spent years trying to kill each other get on the same boat. This is where Armin, Mikasa, Jean, Connie, Reiner, Annie, Piek, Levi, and the remaining Marley and Brass form a desperate alliance. They're not saving the world from Eldia as a whole. They're saving it from one Eldian who stole the Founder, the Attack, and the Warhammer, and decided to rewrite history with footprints. Their plan is insane but simple. Reach Eren, kill him, and somehow stop the Founder's command. The final battle kicks off over Fort Salta, where the last human airships attack and are instantly shredded by the Beast Titan's thrown debris. However, this beast is just a puppet grown from Eren's spine. The Alliance skydives onto Eren's massive founding Titan body, a nightmarish spine stretching for kilometers. On that bone highway, they fight an army of past Titan shifters, resurrected from the paths. Old Jaw Titans, Cart variants, even previous Colossals. Armin is captured and dragged into a bomb-like explosion, sacrificing himself to blow a hole in the Founder's body. Then later returns from the paths after confronting Eren. One by one, Ada the Alliance carves a path until Mikasa, guided by a sudden vision, enters a strange, cabin-like space. This path's adjacent world is where Eren's true self remains, and where Ymir has been watching. Here we finally learn Ymir wasn't just waiting for a royal, she was waiting for someone to free her from 2,000 years of love and obedience. Eren couldn't do it. The royal line wouldn't do it. Mikasa does. She chooses to kill the person she loves most, beheading Eren inside the cabin and in reality, breaking Ymir's curse at its emotional core. After Eren dies, we loop the timeline. His powers had already sent memories backward, pushing Grisha to slaughter the Rice family, nudging every key moment into place. To you, 2,000 years from now, finally lands as a message echoing between Ymir, Eren, and Mikasa across centuries. A girl running into a tree, a boy seeing the future, and a soldier with a red scarf all converge here. But even with the Titans gone, what exactly did Eren's choice leave behind for the world that survived? After the Titans, epilogue, cycles, and what the timeline really means. So this is where the entire 2,000-year story finally lands. We followed every branch of paths, every war, every sacrifice, and now we can zoom out and see this is the complete timeline of Attack on Titan laid out from that first girl running into a tree to a ruined world swallowed by nature. Let's start with the macro arc and fast forward. Ymir falls into the source of all living matter, becomes the first Titan, and spends her life as a slave building Eldia. After her death, her power splits into the 9 Titans, and Eldia rises as the strongest empire on the planet. Skip forward, and Marley claws its way back with its own Titans, flips the script, and turns Eldians into caged devils while winning the Great Titan War. Many generations later, Karl Fritz gets the founding Titan, hates what Eldia has done, and retreats to Paradise. He builds the 3 walls out of countless colossal Titans, erases memories, and bluffs the rumbling to keep the world away. Inside a fake monarchy rules, the truth is buried, and humanity believes it's the last pocket of life surrounded by monsters. Then a boy watches his mother get eaten. Eren's childhood rage drives him to join the military, awaken as a Titan, and become a symbol of hope inside the walls. The scouts push out, uncover the Rice conspiracy, and eventually reach the basement, where the books blow open the lie, the outside world is alive, and Marley has been pulling the strings the whole time. From there, the camera flips. We see Marley's warrior candidates, their fear, their propaganda, and how they were raised to hate island Eldians. Eren crosses the sea, becomes the aggressor in Liberio, and the story of humans versus Titans mutates into a global ethnic and ideological war, meaning there are no clean sides left. At one point, the cycle looks unbreakable. Hatred passes from Ymir's slavery to Eldian conquest to Marleyan oppression to Eren's rumbling. Each era had chances to stop. Ymir could have walked away from the king, Karl Fritz could have told the truth, Marley could have ended the warrior system, Zeke could have chosen life over euthanasia. Eventually, it's Eren who takes on all that inherited trauma and turns it into the worst possible answer and the only answer violent enough to shatter the status quo. Eren's path runs from victim to hero to mass murderer and finally to a catalyst. His genocide ends all Titans, forces the world to confront Paradis directly, and gives his friends a narrow road to peace. As we know, that peace doesn't last forever. Paradis militarizes, wars continue, and far in the future, the island is wiped out in another conflict. Yet the last image pulls us back to the beginning. A lone child and a dog exploring the ruins of that massive tree, where a new entrance to the source waits. Is history about to repeat, or is the story of Titans finally over? That's on us to decide. So now, where was the real point of no return in this timeline for you? When did Eren stop being a hero? Drop your take in the comments, tell us which moment hits different now that you've seen all 2,000 years, and rewatch the series with this full context in mind. If you want more deep dive timelines like this, make sure to subscribe and stick around for the next world we break down.